Hello, this is a video on how Tucson bird count data forms work and how to do data entry through the original Tucson bird count online system. So this is not so much about eBird, which is another option for collecting data and doing data entry on Tucson bird count. This is using the original proprietary system that was created back in the day when the count was originally founded in 2001, before eBird even existed. So this original system still runs and operates correctly, and you can use it to do data entry if you're doing it sort of the old school way, or if you're helping us with a backlog of data entry and have some data forms that people have sent in that need to be entered. So we're going to talk about how you do that. So first, let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So this is what a Tucson bird count data form looks like. So this is the digital file. These are the forms that have been, I mean, I've slightly modified them over the years, but they are pretty much what's been used since about 2001 when the count started. And they are designed to do 4 point count locations on one piece of paper. One double-sided piece of paper is how they're designed. Tucson bird count is almost entirely point counts where the volunteer will stand on one location and a very specific location year after year, and for 5 minutes count all the birds that they see and hear from that location. So how this works is the front of the form, this part here, is where you put the information about the survey itself. So this square is going to be for the first survey, where they're going to put the site ID, the date, the start time. Now, often people will sometimes put the date on one square. It's best to put the date on every survey because you can technically, you certainly can split up a route over multiple mornings if you would like, since each 5 minute survey is like its own standalone survey. So for convenience and not surveying too late into the morning, especially in the summer when it gets hot, some people will sometimes do it over several days, which is totally permissible. So just to make sure everything's super clear to everyone involved, it is best to put the date on each point that's happening on the sheet, or just maybe write the date and then do an arrow indicating they're all the same date or whatever. So the date should be on here, as well as each site ID number, and then the start time. We don't record an end time since they're assumed to be exactly 5 minutes. There can also be some information. This whole page is also about, the reason we have all this empty space at the bottom is if you need to tell us something about the point location, this is where you would write that. So we've been having a lot of issues the last couple of years with routes becoming less accessible due to gates going up, like a neighborhood becoming a gated community, or just construction or something like that that makes access impossible or difficult, or some other issue. Let's say now there's a no trespassing sign that had never been there before, that kind of thing. This is where you would document those issues, or anything else that happens, like any other details, like if you're seeing a cool mammal or whatever. This is where you can make any sort of notes about a survey. Okay. So you're going to start by putting your route number at the top, your name, primary observer, and then if there's any other people helping you with the survey, which is totally fine. A lot of people do it as either a duo or even a small group. That's fine. It's also totally fine to just do the survey as one person. So you're going to, each point count, you're going to put this very important information like date, time, and the name of the point, the assigned Tucson bird count name. And then on the back, you're going to flip it over, and this is where you're going to record your bird. So you're going to put the site ID again at the top of this column. And as you're doing your 5 minute, timed point count time, we have the most common Tucson birds listed on the sheet. And you're going to go ahead and just do hash marks or dots, or somehow keep track of the total of all the Anna's hummingbirds or Gila woodpeckers, lesser goldfinches that you're hearing or seeing during the point, during that 5 minute span. And any additional species, you're going to go ahead and write them in and then continue the tally. Now, how the Tucson bird count works is we have the point count column, which means you can, those are all the birds you're seeing during that exact 5 minute span. So these are like what would be considered sort of in survey, the birds that are part of the sample size of exactly 5 minutes standing on that location. This supplemental column is for birds maybe that you notice after the 5 minutes has ended or before the 5 minutes has started and you don't detect them during the 5 minutes, or like a species you see as you're headed to the next point. So it can be between points or it can be before or after time. So these are just sort of extra birds. It certainly is not necessary to be doing that for really common birds, although it can be, especially ones that happen right after the timer ends. I'll sometimes record real common birds like that. But if you're heading to the next point, you don't need to be counting like the pigeons on the way. But if you see a new species, that can be really cool to put that in as a supplemental bird. So there should sort of be totals for the during the 5-minute count right here, and then any additional birds that are detected can go in this supplemental column. And so then there's 4 of these so that we can save paper and do 4 point counts, up to 4 point counts per sheet. So that's how the data forms look. And then to do actual data entry, you're going to go to the Tucson bird count website. So this is tucsonbirds.org. You can also just Google Tucson bird count, but it's a pretty good web address we got. It's www.tucsonbirds.org. This is what the homepage looks like. It is a WordPress template website. So to do data entry, you're going to go to this last tab here on the green stripe, results and data entry. You're going to click that. And it's going to take you to another WordPress page that has links to various sort of tools you can use to visualize and view the data, which is kind of cool to look at. But we also have a data entry link. So this, let me log out. This would normally look like this. It's password protected in a sense. You have to put in your first name, your last name, and the email that you use to sign up for the count. We do have a login that is sort of like a master login. And if you're helping us with data entry, you will have received that information. So we have one login that gives you access to everything. But normally you would log in as, if you're a volunteer entering your own data, you'd log in as yourself. And the way the name is spelled and everything has to match what I've put into the system in the back end. So when I set people up for the count, like a new volunteer, I'll often make sure that this is what they want and that this email is the correct one, because it does need to be the one that I have put in the system. And I just realized that's right. It's not my work email that I have in the system. It is my personal email. And this is not how my name is spelled in it. This is how it's spelled. So it has to match exactly, because that's how it's using to make sure that you should be in the system. When you are a volunteer and you've been using these sorts of credentials to log in, it will only show you the routes that are assigned to you. So this prevents errors and mistakes. There is an overarching login that lets us see all of them if we need to do data entry for other people. But doing it yourself, it's only going to show you the ones you signed up for. So we have an enter observations button. Upload pictures and view summary also do work, but you're almost always going to be using this enter observations because you're entering some data. You can go ahead and click that. It's going to default to the route you clicked but you're going to want to go to the correct point count. So route number 554 has 3 point count locations. You want to select which one you're talking about. You want to select the session for which you are counting, because Tucson bird count part counts have 4 quarterly counts, and they're all listed here, these quarterly counts. And most of the routes, though, are really only done during the spring count. So you're going to just do the draw down to the correct one. The most recent count period should default to the top. 90% of your surveys are going to be point counts. There are a few transects, though. So if you are entering data for a transect in the Tucson bird count, you're going to want to change this to transect, but they're mostly going to be point count, which is listed as the default. It should do the primary observer as the person who logged in, because it knows your login credentials, right? So it should default to that name. And if it's your name, if that's correct, just go ahead, just proceed. But if it's not quite right, or if you're helping us with a sort of backlog of data entry, you're going to want to go select the correct name of the counter. If there was anyone who helped you, you can go ahead and enter their name here, or names. It'll take, I think, up to like 250 characters here. You want the date. That's very important. And you want the start time. The date needs to be in the format of 2-digit month, / 2-digit day, / 2-digit year. And it does show this over here on the right, also saying you could abbreviate sort of the standard abbreviations, but I find it easier to just do the numbers and the /. So the system does sort of give you an example. You're going to want to do the time, either military time although these counts really should be happening in the morning, so it shouldn't really matter. And you can put AM or PM behind it, but it is not really necessary. It will assume you mean AM, is how we've set the system, since protocol is that survey should be within it's a few hours of sunrise. So there really should never be afternoon surveying, but you could put PM if you need to, but it's going to assume AM if you don't tell it anything else. If anything has happened and the site has been moved or it has stayed the same, that's where you can choose this. It does default to same, assuming everything's okay, because that's usually the case. But if something has happened, or maybe you have a better written out description where it hasn't moved necessarily, but let's say the tree that was in the description that was given to you to do the survey is gone or something like that, or there's the name of the store that's mentioned has changed or something like that. That's where you can then select new description and then put some notes in there. If you had to move the count because there's like no longer access, so you moved it, let's say, 50 yards down the road, that's considered quite close. So say I moved it close or I moved it far, or this count or retired, this count is just no longer, this point count is no longer possible. So this is where you can choose, but they're almost always going to be the same. And then you can create, once you have that all filled in, you click this button down here, create this new visit. Oh, valid time, eh? Okay. There we go. Okay. I'm not sure what I did. I must put a space or something after it. So now what it's telling you is that it has created a site visit in the database that you can't see. It's happening on a computer here at Tucson Audubon. It has assigned it a visit ID. Don't worry about that. It's auto numbering this survey now. And then when you're ready to put in birds, you have the data sheet. You say, okay, and it is alphabetical. So you're like, okay, we had an Anna's hummingbird. The count was 1, but they also had a supplemental 1. So unlike some of our other systems, you can put in the supplementals right here. They don't need to be on a separate list. If this gets a little more complicated for volunteers who are using our newer methodology of doing eBird to do the data entry, which has tons of pros, but this is one of the things that this older system has up on eBird as an advantage here than doing it with eBird, because eBird you have to create like a new checklist to do supplementals. Or if you're familiar with our important bird areas data entry that we run here at Tucson Audubon, this also requires a new sort of list to be generated to then put in the supplementals. But with Tucson bird count, you can put them right in, which is kind of cool. So if you have, say, we had an Anna's hummingbird during the 5 minutes, and then we noticed another one after the end, you add the species. And it's going to show it here for you. So this is nice because it shows, it's sort of like confirming to you that it has put in that bird observation. And then the next one on the list is we heard about Verio. This is a winter count, so let's make it more accurate. That there was something like white crowned sparrow. And you can start to type too. That will start to bring them up there, white crowned sparrow. And there was 6. We're going to add the species to the visit. But let's say we've entered all of our species now that are sort of like the ones that were on the point count, maybe with a supplemental, maybe without. But we have a few species that have been recorded that were only supplemental. And that's pretty easy to handle. You're just going to go down. Let's say we saw a red-tailed hawk. That we saw a red-tailed hawk between 2 point counts, but we didn't have one on the survey. You can just go ahead and put a 0 and then have the supplemental be 1. Okay, so this was not a bird we detected on the count, but one that's only supplemental, you're going to add it, and there it is. Now, if you made a mistake, you can hit this delete button. It will delete just that bird record. If you want to edit it, like, oh, wait, it was a 1 and 1, you can hit edit, and it will give you a chance to change it, and then update this species. And it's going to show you that it did it. So it's pretty intuitive. I feel like this is a pretty well-built system, and it's kind of nice how you can do the supplementals and the regulars at the same time. And when you're done, you're just going to hit done with this visit, and it's going to take you back to that data entry page where then you can select what you're going to enter data for. And if you needed to do the next point count in this series, you just go to the right route and then do the pull down to the correct point count number. and then it looks good. It's winter session, it's point count. That's the correct observer. You're going to put the date in again. Now it should be a different time than the previous one. So then let's say this one was like 7:05. Same, no notes. Or if you had notes, you could type them in here and then create visit, and then you're off. You just pull down your bird. So it's pretty intuitive. I feel like it's a pretty stable system. If you ever have any issues, let me know, because sometimes like it can act kind of weird if we have the database open at the computer here at Tucson Audubon, like we can remote in and we have to go in there to set up new count periods or add new volunteers, or just sort of sometimes we're in there just fixing mistakes that have been made in data entry or whatever. So if the database is open, it can error, or sometimes I'll forget to open the new count period in time or whatever. If you have any issues, just reach out to me and we can get it fixed. Or if something happened where you realize, oh no, I entered my whole set of data and I put the wrong year on the dates or something like that. Rather than you trying to figure out how to fix it, that's quite easy for us to fix it on the back end, and just let me know and we can make any changes or fixes that you need. And or very occasionally, which is always cause for celebration, someone will see that their species is not on the pull down, like they got a new rare bird that we haven't added to this list. If that happens, that's pretty cool, and let me know. And it does happen about I'd say pretty much every year. There's at least one new species we have to add, which is pretty exciting. So I hope this has been helpful, and that you have no problems doing Tucson bird count data entry through our sort of historic system, and pretty glad that we were able to keep this running over the years. It has been challenging with software retiring or becoming obsolete. So pretty glad with help of a very valued uh, tech volunteer that we've been able to keep this running quite smoothly these days. So yeah, I hope this was helpful for you in Tucson bird count data entry.